Hey everyone, Nathan here on another episode of Unscripted. Today I have Patrick Kelley. Now, you may know Patrick Kelley as the tattooed nerd. He's also a Harley enthusiast. He obviously has quite a bit of tattoos, and he has this amazing channel on YouTube. Patrick, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate more that you're actually wearing a tattooed nerd shirt.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Look at that.
I started that as a joke, honestly, that somebody dared me to do. I'm like, I'm going to do it. And you know what? I get like pictures on LinkedIn of people buying them. And so thanks for supporting the cause. I don't know what the cause is, but I
The
thought
cause
it
is
was
you. The cause is
yeah.
you. Come on. Oh gosh, it's funny. And actually, we can start with that question because you've been fairly popular, very popular, I should say, on YouTube and on LinkedIn. I know you have multiple channels today, but how did you get started? What made you start down this process? It's, I think, been a year and a half now, right? Or has it been longer?
I've been at Zoom for about 4.5 years now. And I started doing videos about 3 years ago. But before I worked at Zoom, I worked at a small software company you might have heard of called Microsoft for 12 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to make it, I think. They're doing well. And obviously, I used to do Teams videos, and these were faceless videos. These were simple videos like how to mute your camera, and I would just show you how to do it on the screen. And then I went to Zoom, and it just felt inauthentic to keep doing videos on Teams. Obviously, I'm working at Zoom, so I'm not going to keep doing Teams videos. But it just seemed doing videos on Teams on Friday and then starting a job at Zoom on Monday. I'm like, I can't do that to my audience. So I took a year and a half off of doing any LinkedIn posts. I didn't do anything, didn't do anything on YouTube. And then one of my colleagues that I had worked at Microsoft with and had come over to Zoom was like, hey, when are you going to start doing videos again? And I'm like, you know what? That's a great idea. Because when I was an engineer, when I first was here at Zoom, I was doing a lot of the demos on the Zoom app inside of Microsoft Teams. And I was getting really good at it. And a lot of more AEs and SEs were asking me to do it for their customers. But then honestly, Nathan, I got sick of doing the demo. I was doing it like 10 to 15 times a week. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just do a video of me doing the demo. And I did the demo, and just because I selfishly didn't want to do the demo anymore, it was monotonous and I was sick of it. So I did the demo, and then I would send an AE would invite me to the meeting. I'm like, no, have them watch this demo first, and then if they have questions, let's have a meeting. So that's really where it started, and then I started escalating it over the course of months and years until where it's at today.
So that was the Zoom videos, obviously, and I know where you do a lot of those, and they're fantastic. I watch probably almost all of them. Then you started Tattooed Nerd, right? That came after, so that's about a year now in. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I started Tattooed Nerd because, again, not that I don't love talking about UCAS stuff all day long, but sometimes I just want to talk about something else, right? There's something else on my mind, and I get the urge to just share it. For some reason, I do a lot of scripted stuff, and you know how it is. You write a script, you do a script. It seems salesy and it's maybe a little cheesy, but sometimes, like on a Friday, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to fire up the camera and just go and just ramble for 10, 15 minutes about what's new in life, what I'm thinking about. And it has nothing to do with work typically.
And that's greatly appreciated because I think it's been a while since I've done a scripted video. Come on, the show's called Unscripted, right? So the whole idea is to be completely as natural and authentic as possible. Yeah, sure, we'll come up with some topics ahead of time, but there's no script here. I actually find it ironic that I'm staring into the lens of a teleprompter, or lens of the camera in a teleprompter, yet there's no script. I don't think I've actually used the teleprompter with the script yet, but it is more authentic and natural. So that brings me to my next question. I think this kind of becomes the fun question of this interview. What have you learned along the way? I know I have learned a lot just in a matter of months. But what have you learned along the way, along with, I guess, in terms of everything from production to marketing, all that kind of jazz with a podcast?
I think we all probably have an organic growth process when we step into this field, because I didn't grow up to be like a production level producer of content. That was never my goal. It just happened along the way. But then, as any good engineer or any good problem solver, you find better ways of doing things that are higher quality, probably more efficient. And then the simple side thing that you're doing to maybe help your job all of a sudden became like a passion. right?
Mhm.
And I define passion as things that I don't get paid to do, that I do outside of work, that I enjoy doing. For example, I don't like writing blogs. I hate writing blogs, but you know what? I have to write blogs for my job. So I write the blog. I don't think about when I'm off work, I'm like, how can I write that blog better? That's not my passion, right? But I will literally watch YouTube videos on cameras and microphones. I bought courses on how to content create at a better level. And it's this, obviously, that makes my job better because I produce better and higher quality content. But now I'm doing something that I truly love. And then I started out, this is not even a Logitech plug. I started out with the Logitech Brio. And that was a camera. I literally used that camera for 5 years and it did everything that I needed it to do. It was one of the best webcams I've ever used. But then I started getting into the Sony SV1, and then I got into the Canon cameras on DSLRs, and then I was getting into Elgato Camlink stuff and going from 720 to 1080 to now 4K, and then I started getting to XLR microphones, and then all of a sudden I started studying key lights and fill lights and hair lights, and I'm like, no normal person does this. You only do it because it makes you a better, obviously, presenter, it makes you a better content creator, but it makes you love it even more. And that's where I found I really truly love doing this. And it wasn't ever my goal.
Yeah, I agree. I started off, I think I started off with a Brio. Actually, I started off with our newer camera, the 705, which you just did a review for, which was fantastic, by the way. But yeah, I started off with the 705, and I've had the 705 for a year and a half now. So you can imagine we're using it in beta for such a long time as they were refining it. But the first couple ones I definitely did with the Brio. And then I'm like, how does Patrick get his awesome image? And how does he have the great bokeh effect? And how does he do his lighting? So my first big jump was actually the microphone. So I'm using a Rodecaster Duo with we used to call it the Blue Sona. Now it's called the Yeti Studio. It's a Logitech microphone. That has definitely up-leveled just the audio alone. But I was never happy with the video. I don't think I'll ever be happy with the video, to be honest. But right now I'm using a Mevo Core camera. It just came out. Now it's meant to be a stream camera, but of course you can use it as a wired webcam. You can use it with NDI mode and all that kind of stuff. I'm using it straight as a webcam mode right now with a 9mm lens, and it does a pretty good job. It actually does a great job. I haven't found my favorite lens yet. As you can imagine, I'm going to keep messing around with that. But you know what? The hardest part for me was lighting, and it still is lighting. And not just lighting is hard in general. I think that might be the hardest thing. You can go buy an expensive camera with a really expensive lens and get a great picture. You can go buy a really amazing microphone and an audio interface and have a great audio sound. Lighting is super subjective, right? You can do the Rembrandt view, and you can do all these different things. And of course, like you, I think over the last 3 months since I started this podcast, I've probably watched 30, 40, 50 hours worth of YouTube. The Tom Bucks, the Marcuses, all those guys, they've just spent so much time educating the public, which is fantastic. But I think one of my biggest challenges is I have these attic ceilings, right? So they bounce light in really different ways. So I've been keep adding stuff like wood and like tiles and stuff like that, trying to balance it out. And then as soon as I do one thing, it breaks something else. Every light I move, it basically casts some sort of shine or reflection on something else. So glass is a no, right? It's a big no. And someone actually told me, you know what? You can just hang a picture frame. Just don't put the glass on it. I'm like, gosh, why the heck didn't I think of that? That's such a great idea. But those are the kinds of things that like drive me crazy. And I'm sure it has driven you crazy as well. Now, how about editing? Do you do a lot of editing post, or do you just make a couple edits and off you go?
Oh, that's a great question. And just to reiterate your lighting thing is that I had the same problems, and then I started painting stuff in my office, and then it changed all the lighting, and then I had motivational lighting, and it never ends. And my wife is like, "What did you buy from Amazon today? Did you really need that?" I'm like, "Yes, I truly did need that." To get to your editing question, editing probably takes the longest of production, honestly. Now, when you do a podcast level editing, that editing is easier, right? You can edit out or gaps or spaces. You can even edit out mistakes should there be made. But part of the podcast is the authentic nature of it. People aren't expecting you to be perfect, right? You can say and make a mistake and say double words like that, like I just did. In a podcast, no one cares, or maybe it's not as important. But when I do a sort of a commercial level video for Zoom, or I do an enablement video for Zoom. You mentioned I did the MX Brio review for Logitech maybe a month ago. That one has to be perfect, right? Yeah. You can't screw that one up. And so when I'm editing, by the way, I use Camtasia for editing software. I am not a Hollywood level editor. I am a basic editor, right? So the Final Cut Pro learning curve, I have no desire for that. Like that. You're not paying me to edit in fire graphics from a helicopter. That's not what I'm getting to do. I'm editing me as a video person. And so a lot of times I script a lot of things. I do a lot of webinars. I do a lot of like 1 minute commercials. My second channel is Got a Minute on Zoom. So those are quick hitters. I have to, a minute and a half most, I have to get every word perfect, and it has to go fast because I'm doing a lot of information quickly. So I have to script everything. And of course I don't get it right the first time. So I have to script everything, do as well as I can, and then put all that stuff together. I don't put a ton of graphics, right? I'll do a B-roll overlay of maybe the camera that I'm talking about for that MX Brio review. I probably did more B-roll than I've ever done in any single video. In a 5-minute video, I did tons of B-roll. But again, you're not doing B-roll in a podcast, so that's not as important. But editing takes a bulk of time, and it's a whole other art and a whole other learning curve that you, besides lighting, besides audio, besides cameras. Editing is a whole other art, but you have to be good at all these things to put the end product together. So you have to be not only a jack of all trades at a level 100, you have to go deep in a lot of this stuff too. And thankfully, YouTube's are.
Yeah, and so it's funny because you're gonna laugh. I use iMovie. I use iMovie, right, as my final shot at doing everything. It's one of those things where I don't know why, but it's just easy. I have all the other tools. I have Final Cut. I have Premiere Pro. It's just easy. And 90% of what I've done. I actually use Ecamm, so we're using Ecamm right now to record. And then after Ecamm, I go into Descript. And I do actually take the ums and ahs out, not to make it perfect because I need to shorten the video, which I'm obviously going to do with this one to fit into 15 minutes, but that's okay. Yeah. And I actually do audio levels too with Descript. So that does a really good job with that as well. But the final thing is just putting in the audio, and I'm pretty sure I can do music even in Descript. I'm just not there yet. But it's got to be simple and it's got to be quick because I don't want to spend a lot of time, like you said, just editing, right? It just takes too much time.
It does. Camtasia was a good learning curve, though. It's a level above iMovie, but it's way below DaVinci Pro. Like you can still do advanced stuff, apply LUTs to the camera and coloring and stuff like that, but you don't have to. You can literally get through it pretty quickly.
That's awesome. Patrick, before we leave, if there's one piece of advice you'd like to give anyone in terms of if they are interested in starting a podcast or being as cool as you in any way, what piece of advice would that be?
We've talked a lot about quality of the hardware, the quality of the lighting, the quality of our cameras and audio, but those are superfluous to the first part of having a good podcast. And that's 1, having good content, and 2, doing it in an entertaining way. If you can do that, you can literally film movies on your iPhone and you'd be 100% fine. There are people that are successful, millions of viewers on YouTube that only use an iPhone. So you don't have to get fancy like we did. You can do it basic. But the point is, you have to have good content. So I was given this advice by a YouTuber. Before you even start filming a video, think about the title and think about the thumbnail you're going to create for that title before you even start the video. Because let's be honest, YouTube is a social content platform that wants you to stay in YouTube as long as possible. That's their goal, right? The more videos you watch, the more ads they can push on you. So think about that, right? Is that the reason people are watching your video is 1, it's good, 2, it's entertaining. And also think about the length of the videos, right? There's 2 way different platforms now. As you've seen with TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, there's a criteria for 60-second videos on a mobile, and there's a criteria for 10-15-minute videos on a desktop or a laptop. Completely different techniques for doing that too.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. That's great advice. That's more than one thing, but it's all really good things to think about. That's okay. I can come up with 100 too. Patrick, thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate you being here. And that's it, folks. That's another episode of Unscripted. See you next time.